Stephen Jobs figures heroically in the history of American entrepreneurship. At the age of 22, he founded a company called Apple Computer and proceeded to grow it into a $2 billion business. In the spring of 1985, he lost a power struggle inside Apple and left the company he had created. He spent the summer considering his next move and resolved to begin again. In September, he started a new computer company with his own money. With characteristic flair, he called it Next Incorporated.
Wilfried is a good friend of Michael, my podcast partner, and we just had like an hour of deep diving into the beginnings of the internet as we know it today, but before that as well, because you were the first dealer for Next Computers in Germany, for Steve Jobs. You founded Intershop, you became a billionaire on paper and then all the way down. So there's so much into the story, and throughout this hour I had like 8 ideas for videos. But the one thing that I definitely wanted to discuss, because you met Steve a couple of times, you know people who know him a lot more, you told me, but since you're also from Kiel, my home turf, there is a connection. That's what I want to show you. That's a video that he recorded. I'm not sure. I think
maybe I can tell you. I don't know.
Yeah. Let's have a look.
I should know.
You should know.
Yeah.
I mentioned this video a couple of times on the channel.
What is it about?
It's a lost interview that they found a couple of years later and published. And there is a part, and I watched the whole interview, and it struck me when I saw that, because this part is like 2 minutes about communication and why this is so important. And he tries to explain the journalist that he's with how they communicate at Next. And I want to know from you, what do you think about it, and what do you learn from the Silicon Valley time? And we have to switch to HDMI.
I've seen the revolution here with my own eyes, and it's actually larger than the first two. Let me give you some examples. If we want to, if we're going to be doing a special project, let's say with a company, and let's say the company's called what's your
WGBH.
WGBH. We're going to be doing a special project with WGBH, and what we'll do is we'll create a special mailbox, WGBH, and we'll put 20 people on it that are going to be helping on this project. Now, these 20 people will be from all over our company, from marketing, from sales, from engineering, some from manufacturing, maybe some from our Boston office so they can be close by. And if one sends a message to this mailbox, they'll all get it like that, instantly. And if one sends a reply, they'll copy the whole mailbox on it so the rest of the team members get to read the intellectual content going back and forth. And everyone in this mailbox will probably get around 30 mail messages a day. And they'll spend about 20 minutes, 30 minutes reading these and answering these per day. And it'll be like a beehive. Now, this project's very important for our company, and I want to make sure it's getting off right. So I'll put my own name on this mailbox, and I'll see these 30 mail messages fly by, all of the disagreements and the arguments and the thoughts and the decisions. And I can just let it fly by and read it. I can do some background coaching with a few people if I think they're a little off track. I can get right on the network and kibitz if I'd like. And after a month or so, when I know that it's going well, I can take my name off. And so not only is this a way to organize, violating all management and geographic boundaries, it's also a way to manage, where one can see, again, the thoughts and disagreements and decisions of a company fly by a manager in a way that they never could before. And we have seen it reduce the number of meetings we have at least by 50%. We've seen it get far more managers and individual contributors involved in decisions than they ever were before, and we think the quality of the decisions is a lot higher. And we've seen a window for management to look into the process of this organism we call our company in a way that has never before been possible.
This is my #1 video for inspiration for all the talks I give about communication.
Yeah, I guess you're using it because it was done 1990, and most people think, well, 1990.
I especially use it because I share the importance of internal communication and being aware of using tools that helps you to communicate more transparent and with high speed. That's why I use it.
Yeah, let me, maybe you know this, but I'm trying to put this into a broader perspective. What was, when you see Steve, this was exactly, by the way, the time when I met him.
Yeah.
I met him in 1989, but then this was done in 1990. This was exactly how he was presenting and how he looked and all that, so how I remember him. To put it into a broader perspective, what his history was with Apple II, he had invented basically the home computer industry. And then IBM came around, and I think it was 83 with personal computers, which they called the IBM PC, which changed the name of the business into personal computing. And when he launched, with the Mac, he took it to the next level of a computer that was for mere mortals, for people who were no coders, didn't have any technical background. But with Next, he put it into a powerful workstation that was able to do so much more with all the multimedia integrated. Like the mail system that we had on Next was including voice, including graphics, of course. Everything was, I don't know if that's still the format, it was my mail on the format, so that you had multimedia mail. You could mix and match everything in a mail system. So mail was our predominant feature, that our killer app in the beginning. We had many other cool apps, but mail was the system that we used most of the time to show it.
And I can look at my mail system literally hundreds of times a day, because in a half a second I'm reading my mail. So let's take a look at this first mail message. Here's all of the mail messages I've gotten, and I can look at a list of them. I have 12 of them here. And the one that's highlighted shows its contents down below. Here's a picture of the person, in this case Rich Page, who sent the mail message, the date and the time that it was sent, and some other buttons over here that let me do some pretty neat things, which we'll go into in just a sec. Now, this message sent by Rich shows me the layout, or a picture, I guess a diagram, of our new SCSI connector. And I can smoothly scroll through it. And notice that in our mail system, we can put PostScript of any font, any size. We can put any color diagrams in, created by PostScript drawing programs or other types of drawing programs, and we just send it. Let's take a look at the next one. Bob Longo has sent us a mail message about our new a new office space that he wants to lease. It's only 20 minutes from the airport, he says, and what he did was scanned in a picture of it with a color scanner, dropped it right in the mail message, and sent it. This is probably going to really increase his chances for getting the funds approved for him to rent the space. Now, if I want to send this mail message to some of my colleagues, I can simply go up here to send and push the button. Up pops a send window, and I can push forward, in which case the contents of Bob's message will be stuck in this window for forwarding. There we go. There's the picture right there. And, of course, I could modify it if I wanted to, or I could add some things. Let's say where it says policy team here, I'm going to put in some a voicemail message, and I'll just push lip service right here, which brings up our lip service function. And I push record. I say, hey, check this out and get back to me. Thanks. And I'll then insert it. And here are the lips right here. I can put them pretty much wherever I want to. And the recipient will just simply click on this and play it. Hey, check this out and get back to me. Thanks.
And the background was, and I'm coming to the final point in a second, the background was that the research showed that most people used phones for communication. And so only every seventh phone call was successful. So when you try to reach somebody, you dial 7 times. Remember, back in 1990. And that's why in the US you have so many answering machines, which we didn't have here. So that you can sync people faster. You can at least leave your message and somebody can call back. But phone was the predominant technology for communication. And so he put this all on mail as an asynchronous, and that's how we described it. Don't try your 7 phone calls, try this, it reaches the audience, and if you want, you can even leave your message there. But then, of course, after a while, many more companies had mail, and it became a mass market thing. And even some companies tried to or could sort of mimic the mail systems we had. And then he took it to the next level, which he called interpersonal computing. I don't know if you've heard that. All our shirts that we had, everything, all our brochures, everything was from personal computing to interpersonal computing, which was including because of the internet, and so that it moves away from just your desk, where you have your own productivity, to something that is a group productivity with interpersonal computing.
Yeah. And what we're going to do today is run through a pretty simple demo of what we call interpersonal computing. Interpersonal computing is the desire to improve group productivity and collaboration, which we think is going to be one of the key uses of sophisticated desktop computers in the early 90s, versus just personal computing, which was improving individual productivity. So as we move to interpersonal computing, the way we communicate is what's going to be important here. And we want to communicate not with just words, but with words in any text, pictures, sounds. And I'm going to take you through how a Next computer enables you to do this in a revolutionary new way. And I'm going to use our mail system as the spine of the demo to show you some pretty neat features.
And this was, at least for 1 or 2 years, it was our main mission, message, vision that we had for Next, the interpersonal computer. So just to give you that background.
And for us, this is the whole idea that Blackboat, like my main consulting company, is founded on. When people say, help us with Office 365 or G Suite or any other tool, is I always start with a question, I always want to meet the CEO or the owner of the company and say, do you understand the power that is behind that idea of communication? And I always go back to this video and refer to that. So that's why I wanted to know, like, what is this background? And like, Steve Jobs, to me, obviously saw that power that is behind that. And
obviously, what he just described was not a product. They didn't have that in place. He often had what we call the reality distortion field, that he could envision something that didn't exist.
He envisioned Slack, actually, back then.
So it was all the time we talked about it. Oh, how can we do this? And there was the biography. It was there were many jokes around Next, but one was the biography of Steve Jobs up until Next, which was published in, I think, 1989 by Jeffrey Young, was called "The Journey is the Reward." Die Reise ist das Ziel. The journey is the reward. And the joke at Next was the gurney is the reward, which is the Trage in German, the thing that where they carry you out when you're dead. The gurney is the reward, because he was pushing people so much for things that he envisioned that we need immediately. This is how it should be. And this was also part of the meetings. The few meetings that I had with him, most of them were. I was preparing. I was very ambitious for the meetings. But when you leave the meeting, you're often frustrated because you can't cope with it. You can't cope with his vision, which goes much further. And when often he says, "Well, this shit is not going to happen," and it should be this way.
Is the if you look at that and the importance of communication that made Apple big, is that something that Steve brought into that company?
Absolutely. Apple was dead in the water when they acquired Next. We thought they would go bankrupt within weeks. From a technology point of view, maybe we were arrogant, but we knew it because we had as I mentioned earlier, we had started to develop or using Lisa and then develop for Mac, so we knew how crappy it was. It was great in the way from a user perspective, but underneath it was total crap. The whole operating system of the Mac was put together way too fast. It was not on Unix, and they tried to fix that. And so Apple didn't have a future, I think, from a technology stack, from how they were targeting the market. What had rescued Apple for a while was desktop publishing, which was only available on Apple, on Macintosh, and they had created this ecosystem around them that I talked about with Linotype and all these companies producing stuff for Mac for the desktop publishing revolution. But other than that, outside of desktop publishing, it didn't have a future. So when Steve came back, the first thing was he threw basically everything out, brought Next in and said, okay, Next is going to be the next operating system. They had different names for it, but everything you see today, even on, is NextStep. You even see that in the lines of code, that some codes are still NX, starting some function names today, because it's based on NextStep. And even iOS, when it was introduced in 2007, was to a large degree based on NextStep, so which they called macOS 10. macOS 10 was NextStep. And so you see still, if you look at the old screens of Mac before Next, and you look at Next, and then you look at macOS 10, you see the similarity of the all the icons and everything. We had that at Next, the same methodology, how the icons were placed on the desktop, and lots of other things deep underneath, like the tool that we were using to create apps was Interface Builder. The guy who wrote it, by the way, another European, Jean-Marie Hulot from France. He died, unfortunately, a few months ago. So was also one of my really good friends at Next. He had created the Interface Builder, and that was a revolutionary design or development tool that all of that they brought to Apple. And so I think, as I said, I think Apple would not exist without that decision that they
had Next
made to acquire Next. And of course, a big part of it was bringing Steve Jobs back, and the vision and the drive and all that he brought. But it was also to a large degree the technology that they had developed.
Perfect. So that's then this goes back to that time, and it helps me to frame a lot of stuff that we do today, and give it a bit more painting into the picture, a bit more color to the picture that I already had.
Yeah. Have you looked at all? I mean, there are so many videos, which is nice on YouTube. I attended some of the presentations at Next, like the one I mentioned, Davis Symphony Hall, when he introduced it in 1988, 12th of October. I wasn't there because I only got there in January 1989. But the second one, 2 years later, when he introduced Next Station, when he was at the top of things, introducing many companies that were releasing their apps, like WordPerfect and Lotus and so on.
I've seen a lot of presentations.
Yeah,
I will definitely, for this video, I will definitely go back to some of them and put them in.
I think the most phenomenal presentation that I've ever seen was the one that he did when he introduced Next Station, because he was also introducing a video graphics card called Next Dimension, and it was phenomenal. When you saw it, it was kind of like throwing us into the next decade, and with the technology that they had available, and all these companies supporting it, developing for Next. For some reason, it didn't materialize for lots of other reasons that I don't want to go into. But from a technology standpoint, and from the vision that he had, it was totally phenomenal.
Good morning. Today, we're going to introduce 4 new products. We're going to show you some of the neatest apps that have ever been created for any desktop platform. We're going to show you the best color that's ever been. And we're going to talk about what we think is going to be the most important new application area of the 1990s, called interpersonal computing. People told us they loved NextStep, and that it was 3, 4, 5 years ahead of anything else they'd ever seen in the industry. So let's examine color. We wanted the best quality color. So how do we find it? Well, first we have to say, what is quality? How do we define quality? We define it in 2 ways. One is by the number of colors. Most companies ship systems with 8-bit color, which gives you only 256 colors on the screen. While that is enough to do pink borders around your windows and purple menus, it is not enough. It is not enough to put a photograph on the screen, which is what we believe the true market opportunity is. First thing I want to show you is the quality of the color. This is a GE projection system It is nowhere near as vivid as the real monitor. Here we have an image of a beach and a mountain in the background. And one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up a Ferrari here. Now, this is how every other computer, if it could, would bring up the Ferrari, and I'm sure it wouldn't be able to move it around much, but let's say it could. That's not so exciting. I'm going to go use a feature that's built into every NeXT system and eliminate the black background and show the transparency. And if you look carefully, you'll see that you can even see the mountain through the windshield.
I mean, he's done that. He's repeated that a few times, as you know, with the introduction of the first little iMac, the round one, and then the iPod and the iPhone and so on. So he's done it a few times, but for me it was, of course, more personal because I was part of NeXT and to remember.
And I definitely get the connection. And NeXT has a connection to my hometown Kiel, where we both come from, because Wilfried is from Kiel. Thanks a lot for sharing that.
Good.
Thank you so much. Make sure you check out Wilfried's company, ePages, and the podcast. And make sure you, of course, subscribe and comment if you want to know more about that. Thank you, guys.
Okay.